Hi, I'm Brian. Welcome to Autogefühl. It's been a little over a year since Cupra launched as a brand independent of Seat. And in that time, it's been very successful in converting itself just from the performance arm of Seat into a brand in its own right. But until now, there hasn't been one distinct new separate Cupra model. Well, all of that is set to change with the Cupra Formentor. Let's take a closer look and find out what it's all about. At this stage, the Formentor is only being shown as a concept, but it's a very close to production concept. I think realistically this should be hitting the market in around about 2020. So what is it? Well, I think the best description is probably a coupe-style version of the Cupra Ateca, but obviously very much its own car in its own rights. Stylistically, we're clearly borrowing quite a bit from the Cupra Ateca, but also its bigger brother, the Tarraco. So, obviously, if you're going to go with a Cupra SUV style, you're going to need a lot of visual aggression on the road. And a lot of the angularity that you can see cut straight into this face really tells you that this car is meaning business. Now, this is slightly lower than its standard SUV brothers, and the reason for that is it's all about sport and performance. And a lot of this angularity really reinforces that idea. I like the way that they've merged both of the other styles and added something a little bit new and different just for this car. There's a lot that's fresh here, there's a lot that's punchy. I think the launch of the Cupra is all about saying we are here and we are sporty and we are aggressive. And that really does come through in the design. No, I haven't seen that reflected anywhere as directly and as aggressively as it is in this car. So I think when this hits the markets, it's going to be very popular indeed. The face of the Formentor is very distinctive, but it's the side where the design really comes to life. If you start at the front, you can see a traditional approach to an SUV wheel arch. It's big, it's bold, and it's a little bit square. But look how the design changes as we sweep towards the back. They've used the windows here to really accentuate the angularity of the design, and this massive rear shoulder does nothing more than reinforce the power of the rear quarter of this car and also the speed and dynamism of the design. Now, I'm not completely convinced in terms of this stylistically working for me personally, but it is going to come down to taste. And what I really do appreciate is that this very much distinguishes it from anything that's gone before. This has its own design language and it is very unique. So, tell me, this is the defining character line. What do you think of it? What's particularly nice about the rear is that uniqueness of design has been carried on right through to the back. So whether you initially love or hate this, it's very distinctive and it really does stress its newness. We have borrowed features from others of the lineup, as you can see, but it's completely freshly delivered. Everything about this says power, speed, performance, and there's lots of lovely Cupra angularity from the lighting design down to this very particular air diffuser on the rear. And look at these exhaust ports, they absolutely mean business. So, okay, it's very fresh, it's very different. I'm not completely convinced by this overhang at the top. It really does compress the rear visibility, but it certainly does add an awful lot stylistically. The whole aesthetic design ties together very nicely indeed. So as I said, whether you love it or whether you hate it, what you can't do is say that it's like anything that you've seen before from Cupra. The outside's certainly fresh and innovative. Let's take a look and see if the interior matches. Well, I think the first thing that strikes you as you open the door is quite how distinctive the interior is. If the outside is defining, then the inside certainly matches. It's very personal to me, but I think I would say I would have liked to have seen a little bit more innovation happening in terms of material selection. Although very distinctive, there's something that looks really very familiar and well trodden about the way that this car is finished. I would have liked to have seen something that just spoke to the future a little bit more in the same way that the brand is trying to overall. But that said, it certainly does look new and different from what's gone before. Is it comfortable? Well, let's take a seat and find out. Well, everything Cupra is supposed to be sporty, and these seats are no exception. They really hold you nicely, and I think they're going to need to. We don't obviously have any numbers yet, it's a bit too early for that, but I can promise you this car is going to be about performance. It looks aggressive and stylish on the outside, so the drive had better match it. Well, if the seat's anything to go by, it's going to be quite a ride. This sports seat with a carbon fiber effect on the rear, which we'll take a closer look at in just a minute, really does hold you exactly where you want to be for the driving experience. Now, let's have a look and see if I can get a little bit closer to the controls. Do you know what? I have to tell you, I'm more than a bit happy to find just standard manual controls on a seat. That's becoming less of a regular thing in top-end cars, and I really enjoy it. It's just quick and it's effective. Well, I'm sitting nice and low down within this car. I am 5 feet 10 or 178 centimeters, and as you can see, I have acres of room at the head. Steering wheel is very nicely positioned and feels very effective. Now, these controls are nothing particularly new. You'll be familiar with the layout and the usage. This obviously is a particular feature for Cupra. Stylistically, it's either going to be your thing or not, but I like the distinctiveness of the design. Full digital dashboard here with lots of different options for changing the layout to something that works specifically for you. And in the middle, we have an infotainment screen that gives you plenty of room and plenty of quality in order to be able to see what you want. Now, I've been saying this quite a lot at Geneva this year, but I am very worried about these borders. I think it looks absolutely fine now, but if you consider the life cycle of a car being anywhere realistically up to around about 10 years, I just don't know how that's going to date. And I think the point of this design is it's supposed to be one for the ages. So I think they maybe could have finished this one off a little bit in a more contemporary way. I would have preferred to have seen something maybe done with an aluminium finish instead of this piano black plastic, but it's possible. That's just my personal preference. Obviously, you're going to have a lot of whistles and bells, including this, which is a rear mounted camera. So the obvious question is that there because it's a nice new modern feature, or is that there because the coupe type styling makes it very challenging to get a sense of the true dimensions of the car purely by using a traditional rear view mirror? Well, I'm going to guess it's the latter. That's always a problem with the coupe design. They look and feel great, and they really drive really nicely. But you don't notice there's any kind of a problem until you're trying to reverse into a parking space, and then suddenly you realize you have no idea where the back end of your car is. So I'm very happy to see that Cupra have already thought about that and provided you with the tools you need to really not need to worry about that at all. As far as the rest of the interior finishing goes, I think you could use the word sparse to describe the styling. It's a little bit cold, a little bit metallic, and you could almost use the word industrial to describe the way that things are laid out here. Well, this car is going to be all about aggression and drive and sportiness, so I think that's very in keeping with the themes that we've seen already from the design language. So, nothing here that stands outside of what you'd expect, and it's really nicely finished. As I said, I'd have liked some slightly more modern, slightly more innovative use of materials, but everything is promising me a really good drive. I'm just going to have to wait and find out if it lives up to expectations. Regular viewers of Autogefühl will know that Thomas has a little bit of a thing for the gear selector in some Porsches. Well, Thomas hasn't had a chance to take a look at this car yet, but I am happy to show him that here we have a smoother version of the exact same idea. It's very small, it's very discreet, but I think it's going to feel nice and sporty when you want to slam it in and really push this car off to get the best out of it. I like the way that this is all distributed. It's very low fuss. It's sleek, it's modern, it doesn't take up any more room than it has to, but at the same time we still have the now standard 2 USB-C ports and plenty of space down here for even the largest of mobile phones. Well, the front's distinctive and fresh, but how about the back? Well, the first thing I have to say upon opening the door is I really like the way that they finished off the rear of those seats. The sports seats, they should be emphasizing sportiness, and this, I'm pretty sure, is going to be carbon fiber effect. The actual carbon fiber looks every bit the part. So for me, it's only a little bit let down when we come to the door. I don't know, maybe I'm being picky, but that just looks a little bit too much like hard plastic for me. You still have these design details, but in contrast to the plastic that's been used, it just doesn't really resonate with the quality that I would like to see back here. That said, I like this dark metal style finishing here, and here. I think that sets it off nicely. And this unique approach to the speaker grille design really does tell you that there's something different happening here. So that's a nice touch. Once you actually sit in the rear, you get to find out the answer to one of the most important questions, and that is, this coupe-style roofline, am I compromising anything in space? Well, of course, it's not a true coupe roofline. And we can see that when we look at how much headroom we have. Wow, for a rear seat passenger, that's extraordinary. Loads of space, plenty of leg room, very comfortable seats back here. I'm always slightly concerned when it comes to these sportier cars that there really isn't often much attempt made to produce any passenger holding in the rear. Now, if the driver gets a bit too used to all of that power and enjoying it, problem is they're held nice and secure, but you can be in for a little bit of a ride when you're bouncing around. That said, obviously that's not every drive you go on, and the seats have been optimized for comfort, so you feel nice back here, and you haven't been forgotten either. There are 2 USB-C charge points back here, your own heating and cooling controls. Well, I say that they're only vents. Doesn't look to be any method of actually adjusting the temperature on them. But it's comfortable, it's very spacious, and because of this massively high shoulder line, which, can you catch that, Thomas? There we go, he's got it. You really feel very secure. There's almost an exclusive feel, an extension of privacy, if you will. I think it would be quite hard to see into the rear of this car from the road. So you actually feel quite special back here. And you know what? That's quite nice. It's always fun noticing the new trends as they come out. And I have to say, at this year's show, putting your rear opening spot underneath that lip is becoming increasingly popular with designers. I guess they just don't want it visually interfering or disrupting with the style. Well, all of this style, which is extensive, has to come at some kind of a price. And there it is. So we don't have an actual number for you, but clearly that is not the largest boot in the world. Let's not forget, this car is about performance, speed and pace, not about needing to pick up wardrobes from IKEA. So you're not going to expect the largest amount of space back here. What I'm not allowed to actually show you any more detail than that of the boot at the moment, I've just been told. So we'll have to use our imagination as to what space might be available underneath this when this car actually does get launched. It's always a bit of fun with show cars, but at least I think we can get a good insight as to how the boot might actually look and function once this car is released. So what about the drivetrain? Well, that is going to be a hybrid. It's going to focus an engine that should deliver around the 242 brake horsepower mark, and it should be coming to you via dual clutch DSG, I believe, but those are very sketchy details at the moment. Now, if that sounds at all familiar to you, I think we first saw that potential lineup in the Skoda Vision RS at Paris last year. So I think there are some clues given there. It should have an efficient range on electricity of around about 50 kilometers, but don't forget that's according to the modern standards, so it's actually a very nice number indeed. Needless to say, sportiness and agility of drive are what this car is going to be all about. So when we finally get those numbers, they should be every bit as exciting as the aesthetic. So, in sum, I think it represents a very bold and impressive move forwards for Cupra. They've really had a very successful first year in terms of establishing themselves as a standalone brand, and I think it's really important that they now start to make their mark. This car absolutely does it. It doesn't look like anything that's gone before it from Seat. It is completely Cupra. And what will be interesting to watch is if there's any cross-pollination the other way around. My money says they're going to wait to see how this one sells first, and then if it sells well, there might well be a standard Saeed version. So if you love the styling, you're not quite convinced about the Cupra thing, don't worry, wait a while. I think there'll be something to suit. Well, if you have any comments or questions, please pop them below. Please subscribe, and we hope we'll see you all again soon.